All right.
Welcome to SpellCast, the Gaming Wizards podcast.
Yep.
So, we spent a good chunk of the last episode trying to figure out if we had talked about something, and we came to the conclusion that we had talked about it, and therefore did not talk about it. Turns out, we didn't talk about it.
See, I was sure that we had, and I think what it was is because, you had talked about, the first chunk of Horizon Forbidden West.
Right.
And hadn't quite finished it yet. But around that same time, another friend of mine had gone through it, and I have talked with them about the ending, and I might have been, meshing those conversations together because it all kind of blends into one.
That seems plausible. So, yeah, I did mention it at the end of that spellcast that we were talking about it, that I had wanted to talk about it and didn't get to, so I was like, we'll talk about it next time. And then next time was 6 months later, and we were like, yeah, we talked about it, right?
Yeah, it's been a bit.
Yeah, so, yeah, I did finally finish Horizon Forbidden West, even as recently as the last spellcast that we did, not talking about it. Yeah, so there were some things that were set up early on that kind of went away in the middle, and I was concerned that they would just drop those plot points, and I'm happy to say they didn't. They did resolve it. The character who mysteriously disappeared a third of the way through the story does come back in the end. There's a surprise villain, and it's a surprise villain on top of the already surprise villains. So
sounds a little sloppy.
It's kind of not really, because I don't know how I feel about it really, but it sets itself up as the middle, because they're really, I think they planned from the beginning to do a trilogy. So
maybe
they set up at the end of the next one, at the end of the first one, there's still some unanswered questions for the second one to go into, and then the second one sets up the big major event that's going to be resolved in the third one, hopefully.
Okay. And you haven't done the DLC, right?
I have not, and I cannot, because
it's only PS5.
Yeah, which is bullshit.
So
maybe they'll release it on PC like they did the first game, but
eventually,
yeah.
So
it's really stupid that they would release the game and not the DLC for older platforms, but
they did the same thing with fucking Final Fantasy VII Remake, where they released the intrograde DLC, but only on PS5.
Huh.
I think it's also on PC.
Yeah,
that DLC is on PC as well, but it's not on the PS4 version.
Huh.
But I was gonna say, because funnily enough, we had a talk about DLC earlier today in one of my Discords. So someone had come in and posted the trailer for the new Mortal Kombat, which I don't know if you've seen. I think it just released today, as far as I know.
I've heard vague whisperings of it.
Well, there's a new Mortal Kombat coming. Mortal Kombat 1. They're rebooting the timeline again. But in the trailer,
okay,
there was kind of a confusion I was having of I couldn't tell who some of the characters were supposed to be. Some of them are really obvious, Scorpion and Sub-Zero are pretty obvious because it's guys wearing a ninja mask that are yellow and blue. It's hard not to recognize those. Kung Lao is obvious because he's got his trademark wide-brimmed hat. But then there was another character who was this god character with fire powers, and I'm like, when I think of gods and I think of Mortal Kombat, I think of Raiden, who's lightning.
Yeah.
So I was kind of confused about that until I looked in the description, and it's Liu Kang, and I'm like, okay.
When did he become a god?
That was my reaction too.
I'm not super familiar with the story of any Mortal Kombat, really. I know like most of the characters' names and some of like their relations to each other, but
I know Mortal Kombat lore like up to the 9th game. But
I am pretty sure Liu Kang wasn't like a god and didn't have fire powers, but
yeah, I mean he kind of had fire powers, but he wasn't like a fire god.
Huh. I've played like 2 Mortal Kombat games.
Yeah. But yeah, so I basically I asked, I was like, so like did I miss something in, and I had to go look up on Google what the last one was because I wasn't 100% sure. I was like, I think it was Mortal Kombat 11. I was like, is there something I missed in Mortal Kombat 11? Why is Liu Kang a god now? And basically I found out that there was apparently a DLC that was released for Mortal Kombat 11 that like set all that up.
Oh.
And it's like, okay, so Liu Kang's a god now because DLC reasons.
But it's the one that's coming out is a reboot anyway, so
yeah, but
it
like,
could have just been like, yeah, we're rebooting it. He was always a god in this
continuity. Yeah. Well, that was kind of like the thought I had too, was like, is this just like a new thing they're just kind of bringing into this new continuity, or is this like something that was set up? Because, like I said, this is not the first time they've rebooted the timeline. But this conversation kind of popped up of like DLC putting like important story stuff into games and like where that's like a good thing and a bad thing. And we kind of came to like the consensus among like that group chat of like DLC can be fine for expanding the story as long as it feels like a good, complete story without it.
Yeah.
And Horizon Forbidden West was brought up because the friend who has played through it didn't really like the ending for Horizon Forbidden West, but like basically the way they put it is that like the DLC makes the ending better because it actually like fills out more of that.
Oh.
So
that's
when
annoying.
Yeah, so when you say that you're like iffy on it, I'm like, okay, so you've like, that's why I was like, and you've not played the DLC, because it's like, okay, because apparently the DLC does go more into that and like actually kind of make that like more of a satisfying ending. I
don't like that. Like,
yeah,
the idea that, because it makes it feel like kind of lazy. Like you can just, like it's one thing when you take out stuff that should have been in the game and make it DLC, and it's another thing to just not put something in the game and add DLC to like make it better later. So instead of making a good ending, they're just like, we'll leave it as is, and the DLC will add context and whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, don't do that. Make the game good and then make the DLC good, and if the DLC makes the game better, that's also good. But if it doesn't, then it's just extra stuff to do in the game.
Yeah,
so, I mean, that's like what the DLC for the first Horizon was like. It's a separate story that you can do at pretty much any point. You want to be a certain level for it, really. But
sure.
As far as like the entire story, you could do it or not do it and not miss anything. It's just extra stuff, and it explores another region of the world that you don't really like. You hear about like in the game, but you never go there. You just meet people who are from there, and it's
right.
And they add some new enemies and stuff to do, but as far as the story goes, it doesn't really impact the either the first or the second game. Like I think they mention it, like the events of that DLC chapter, like they mention it in the second game a couple times. It's like, yeah, remember when you went to this place and did that thing with the machines and stuff? And it's like, yeah, I remember that because I played the DLC. If I hadn't played the DLC, I would be confused. But I also didn't do a lot of the side quests in the first game that you're calling back to, so, it's...
Yeah, it's...
It just kind of assumes you did everything in the game.
Right.
So it's like, I didn't even meet, like, one of the characters who was kind of a main character. Like,
that's funny.
They're a side character, they have their own side quest in the first game, and then in the second game you meet them again, and it's like, yes, I'm an important character now. Remember that thing we did in the first game? Like,
nope.
No, I don't. And I did do, like, almost everybody else's, like, major side quests, so...
That's really funny.
I must have missed the part where I do yours. So, yeah, I mean, I was glad I did, like, everybody else's, because everybody comes back and, it's like, yes, I do remember when I helped you do that thing with the stuff. Yes, I do remember what a big, important part of the main story you were. And I don't remember you, but apparently we killed a giant red thunderjaw or something. So
Red Eye.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
man.
sure it was.
That was a fun fight, though.
I'm sure it was awesome in the timeline where I did that side quest.
That side quest is worth doing, I will say. So, like, I never finished the first game. I basically, like, did, like, 2 or 3 of the main story quests, like, enough to kind of, like, get through, like, the intro bit, and it's like, oh, go to, like, the big city or whatever, and, like, I went there, and then I just kind of fell off the main story and started doing everything else on the map. Like, I cleared every single bandit camp, and I did all of the challenge things. And so, like, I finished that quest line, because I did all the side stuff and just never finished the main story.
Wow.
Which is why I can't do open world games, because I will fall off the main story the moment I try to focus on it.
I guess I do kind of like the opposite thing. Like, I'll go off on, like, and do a bunch of side quests, but eventually I just get like, okay, I'm bored. I want to finish the main story now, and then I'll just, like, run through everything and be, like, pretty over leveled because of all the side stuff I've done. That by the time I get to, like, back on the main track, I'm just, like, destroying everything.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I did for, like, pretty much every Elder Scrolls game, and, like, even the Fallout games. It's like, I'm gonna do all the side quests, and then do the second mission for the main quest.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's like...
Usually,
hooray, you got out of the dungeon. Here, take this amulet to what's-his-name. Cool, I'm gonna go join the Dark Brotherhood. I'm gonna do the Fighters Guild. I'm gonna do the Mages Guild. I'm gonna, I said Dark Brotherhood. All the other...
Thieves Guild,
Thieves
Fighters
Guild, that's
Guild,
the other one.
Mages Guild, yeah.
All the guilds, all the side quests.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
like,
usually...
oh, cool, hi, Mehrunes Dagon. I'm gonna stab you with my level 99 fucking little dagger or whatever.
Yeah, usually when I would do Oblivion, I would at least do Kvatch, just to get the amulet out of my inventory. Like I
didn't even do that.
Like, well, no, you don't go to Kvatch. You just give I would just give the amulet to Joffrey, and then it's like, go rescue Kvatch. It's being attacked by Oblivion Gates, and I go, cool story.
Cool.
I'm gonna go become a Sheogorath cultist in the woods.
Oh yeah, all the Daedra ones too. Yeah, I forgot about that. But yeah, it's like, oh, they're under attack by, otherworldly demons. I'm gonna go learn how to steal stuff better.
Yeah, I think I've done the main story for Oblivion once. Just once. But I've done the Dark Brotherhood like 5 times. And I've done the Shivering Isles at least twice. Because, yeah, like... those games are just more fun when you're doing the side content, I feel. Maybe that's just me.
Generally.
Skyrim, I never even did the main story. I, like, got the first, like, Dragon Soul, because it kind of, like... the game really kind of railroads you, like, towards that quest. Like, to not get that first Dragon Soul and get the Foos shout, you have to, like, go out of your way to avoid it.
Yeah.
Like, the way everything is set up, it like, directs you towards it.
See, that's why you play on PC and download the alternate start mod, which lets you start your character pretty much anywhere, and it even gives you, like, it'll even start, like, a random side quest for you, depending on, like, how you build your character, or you can just like it's like, yeah, I'm just starting in the middle of the map with this already built character or whatever.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so that's a lot of fun because you get to skip like all of the railroading from like when you first, escape from the dragon attack and end up in Whiterun. So
Yeah.
you basically just, and you can still do the main quest. You just start it by going back to that town.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
it's like, but they change, like they rewrite some of the dialogues to fit better with like how you like decided to build your character or whatever. So it's like, instead of, it's like, you escaped from this town, it's like, oh, I heard a dragon attacked this town, you should go investigate it. And then it starts like the main quest from there.
Right.
So
okay.
you go to Whiterun, go get the shout from the mountain, the Greybeards and all that. So you can still do the main quest. It's just, it doesn't force you into starting it as the main quest. So yeah, alternate start mod is fun.
I really wish I found that when I was playing around with modded Skyrim, because I God, I got so because when I would like, when I was trying to make sure like mods were working and stuff, especially like the character creation ones, when I would try to load into stuff, in order for it to load them right, you would have to like go through like with like a new save.
Mm-hmm.
Of like, because like if you loaded like an existing file, it would like have issues. So especially for like the character creation mod. So in order to get to that character creation screen, you have to go through the fucking cart ride, which takes so fucking long when you are doing it over and over and over again, testing. I did not realize how long that scene is and how much it drags when you've already seen it before, until I was trying to get certain character creation mods to work, and I watched it over and over again for 3 hours. Oh my god. Did finally get like what I wanted, like not everything I wanted working, but enough working that I'm like happy with it. And then I like played through the intro and did a couple other things, and then I haven't gone back to it since.
Yeah.
I did the same thing recently with Darkest Dungeon, where I went in and I like put all these mods in, all these like different classes and character skins and all this stuff, and then like started a file and like did a couple runs here and there, and then like I just haven't gone back to it in weeks now.
Yeah.
I Skyrim'd my Darkest Dungeon, where I just went ham on mods and spent more time putting mods into the game than I did playing it.
Yeah. I mean, that's... I also, like, I started playing, like, I got back into Fallout 4, just, like, I downloaded a bunch of mods, but they have a town building mechanic sort of thing,
okay.
And that's way more fun to do, one, with mods, and two, it's more fun than, like, the actual game.
Yeah,
like,
that's fair.
Like, I just built up like the starting settlement area that you start out in, like where you get out of the vault, and it's like the town you lived in before like the whole nuclear apocalypse went down, and so you can you go into build mode and you can scrap certain things. I downloaded a mod that lets you scrap everything, so it's basically just like flat land. I didn't scrap everything because, part of it is the landscape, and you can scrap that too. I didn't want to do that because,
that's too much work.
Yeah, that's a little overkill, but like there's a bunch of ruined houses.
We don't need to go full Animal Crossing on this.
Yeah, there's like a bunch of like collapsed and ruined houses that you can't do anything with, so you can scrap those and build stuff on the foundation, and yeah, so I actually had fun like doing a roleplay character in a role-playing game, funnily enough, because I made my character like a hardcore like Brotherhood of Steel fanatic, so I have like a dedicated building just for like storing all the power armor suits that I've found and like modding them out to be like maximum like overkill and all that, and there's a mod that lets you like layer armor better, because like there's some stuff that you can't wear armor with, and some stuff that you can, and this mod just basically overrides that. It's like, yeah, you can wear any combination of armor. So I have like a badass like Brotherhood of Steel like duster coat and like a robot helmet thing. Kind of makes me look like a Star Wars bounty hunter.
Fair enough.
So yeah, but yeah, I built like a barracks, and I cheated myself a bunch of like Brotherhood of Steel uniforms to give to all the settlers. So it's like, yes, this is a hardcore Brotherhood of Steel like base of operations now.
Nice.
So yeah, and yeah, I mean I did like the main story. I did the main story, you know, a bunch of side quests, all that, all the Brotherhood of Steel route, of course. But
I never did get around to
just...
playing much Fallout myself. Generally, the good stuff I've heard about 4 does tend to lean on the town building aspect. But like beyond that, like I have a little bit of experience with Fallout 3, and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
I remember when 76 was coming out.
Oh god.
Like I remember being really excited about the trailers, because to me it looked at like kind of like Borderlands in the Fallout universe, and then the game came out, and the game was
not good.
it had issues. We'll put it that way. It wasn't a Fallout game, is probably the best way to put it, because there are people that like, even on its release, before they went in and like fixed a bunch of stuff and added a bunch of stuff, there were people who did enjoy 76.
Yeah.
But with the caveat of like, I enjoy this as kind of a generic looter shooter as opposed to a Fallout game, because it's not a Fallout game.
Well, and like
yeah.
the idea that they tried to go for was it would be fully like multiplayer and like no NPCs, like except for enemies. So like anybody you interact with in a positive way would be another player ideally. And one that kind of hinges on a lot of people wanting to play the game and play it the way you intended.
Yeah.
And it didn't really work out the way they wanted it to, so they had to release a major update that added a bunch of NPCs and, you know, quest lines and stuff. So they made it more like, you know, the other like first person Fallout games. So I don't know, I've been thinking about trying to check it out, but also like I don't know, like I think it's still like a heavily online thing. And
yes, it is very much still a heavily online thing as far as I understand it.
Yeah,
but
I don't know if I could get into that. Like,
yeah, no, that's fair. I've heard like generally good things like ever since it's gotten the changes and stuff. Like people who managed to stick with it or like came back to it, or like, yeah, it's an all right game right now. It's not gonna wow you, but it's like a good time.
I'll just keep modding Fallout 4.
Which is fair. It's kind of my attitude towards a lot of games like that, of like, yeah, I'll just keep playing the other one. But yeah, big open world games, man, they're a lot.
Yeah,
I've come to the conclusion that they're not for me.
I mean, I like them, but I like them like because there's a lot of stuff to do, and when I get bored of doing stuff, I can just go through the main quest in like, you know, however long that takes. And sometimes that happens sooner rather than later. Sometimes I do like 99% of like all the side quests and then do the main quest. And sometimes I'll just be like, it's like, okay, I'm bored doing the main quest. I want to finish this now. So
yeah, I think my issue,
I did not really realize how short Breath of the Wild was.
Oh yeah, if you just
do like the main quests and like some of the like shrines and stuff, because yeah, I've been playing through it and I've already got like all 4 of the divine beasts and the master sword. So yeah, I'm like, is there anything else I want to do, or should I just like go kill Ganon now? Because I could do that.
I did,
and it felt like
couple shrines.
It felt like it was really short, like
yeah,
compared to the first time playing it, and you know, not knowing anything about like
what you're doing or any of that. My experience with Breath of the Wild was I wandered off, was just doing the like jump from shrine to shrine, climb a mountain, be like, ooh, what's that over there? And go climb another mountain. So I did that, and then I started one of the quests for one of the divine beasts. I got basically like a quarter of the way through like the Gerudo section, and then I just kind of stopped playing. And I think my issue when it comes to like big open world games, and like this is what I like ran into with Breath of the Wild, with Horizon Zero Dawn, even when I try to go back and play like games like Skyrim and stuff, it's like at my core, I am a completionist. I like to do everything a game has to offer. I like to clear quest markers off my map. And big open world games like that do not have enough of an engaging gameplay loop for the completionist playstyle. Like, most of those games are kind of designed in a, like, you'll kind of do a thing here and a thing there, but not necessarily everything.
Yeah, it's like a big open world, but it's really segmented. Like you go to a segment of this world and find things to do in that area, and then you move on to the next one. Or, sometimes it's like, oh, you have to go to this completely different part of the world to finish this quest or whatever. So,
yeah, but like I think that. Most people kind of like okay, here's like my main quest marker of like where I need to go. And like maybe I'll hit this thing, and this thing on the side on the way to that thing. But me, I'm just like, okay, what is the closest thing I can do? Okay, I do that. What's the next close? Like, I do everything across the map. And those games aren't really meant for that kind of play style, I think. Because, man, you get bored of it so quick. It's... The gameplay loop just isn't for me.
Yeah. I really only go for completion if it's, like, convenient.
Yeah.
Like, especially, like, achievements and trophies and all that. Like, if I get, like, 70% of them just by playing the game, usually I'll go back and look and it's like, okay, does this seem like something I could do,
Sure.
I mean, and, if it is, I'll do it. Or, you have, like, Bloodborne, which is just really basic, like, upgrade a thing, which you're gonna do by playing the game anyway, probably, unless unless for some reason your first time playing you want to do like a low level no upgrade run. I don't know why you would do that.
Right. I mean, yeah, most of Bloodborne,
everything else is like defeat all these major bosses, including these ones that you have to do some extra things for.
The only one in Bloodborne that like you really have to go out of your way for is
the labyrinth ones.
Yeah, I was going to say killing the Pathumaru Queen.
Yeah.
Because holy fuck, going through Chalice Dungeons is a lot.
Yeah, that was a thing.
it's grindy, it's repetitive. I don't hate it, but I don't love it. I sure don't love it. I know what they were going for with it, and I think what those what the Chalice Dungeons do for the game are really cool, actually. Like, there's a lot of stuff that only exists in the Chalice Dungeons.
Yeah.
Like, people were discovering new enemies that were never before seen, like, years after the game came out. And that's cool. That they're, like, this, like, untapped mystery world. I think all the dungeons have now been mapped out. Like, people have actually gone into, like, every possible dungeon and figured out like what's in each one, and they have like all the codes for all the dungeons, including ones that are super broken. Because the way the code system works is just like there are dungeons that the game will not generate on its own, but if you know the code for the dungeon, you can get into it.
Yeah.
And it's a whole thing.
And then you go to the cum dungeon.
The cum fuck dungeon.
Yeah,
and get free levels.
I mean, I like doing that just because it makes it easier to build your character faster.
Sure.
So, yeah. It's you have to do a fair bit to unlock the dungeons in the first place. So
yeah,
it's not like it's a. I wouldn't consider it even like cheating, really, because
Yeah,
you have to be
it's
a
definitely
little bit good at the game to
Yeah.
get that far. So.
It's definitely like an exploit, but you have to go through enough to even get to it.
Yeah.
That like it's kind of like an earned exploit in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do want to mess, like, I've not actually messed with any of those. Like, I did want to go into that one at one point just to, like, build out a character more. But the ones that I, like, really was interested in is there's, like, bosses that weren't finished that were, like, cut from the game.
Right, yeah.
And you can fight some of those, but you have to be really careful because some of the dungeons that lead to them will soft lock your character, basically.
Yeah.
There's ones where there's just, like, no lantern in there. So once you go in, you're stuck in there forever.
Oh.
Like, there is no way out. So, like, that's a thing.
And then, like, talking about, like, the completion and, achievements and stuff, on the other side of that, you have, like, Dark Souls, where it's, like, upgrade every type of weapon, and you need to do all this grinding for all these items, specifically for, like, the one thing, and then you have to do that like 10 times. It's like
the ones that are
that's too much work. I found the one weapon I like. I'm going to use that. I will upgrade that. I'll get the achievement for upgrading that. I'm not upgrading fuck all else.
The one that is really obnoxious for those games is usually the one where it's like, get all the sorceries, get all the pyromancies. Like, you'd think that would be like something that wouldn't be that hard to do, but like in practice in those games, because they obfuscate so much of like character quest lines and like where like
you cannot
extra little like it is impossible to do it in one playthrough,
and you can't do it without a guide. Like,
there
is absolutely no way you are figuring like all of this out without, like, I mean, some of it you might like stumble across just by playing normally, but I mean,
no one has 100%ed Dark Souls without using a guidebook or the wiki.
Yeah.
Like, you are using some other resource to help you find all these things, to figure out all these quest lines, and you're probably still on, like, New Game Plus 3 by the time you get them all.
Exactly.
And
that's... Yeah. I mean, that's why I wanted to wait a bit after Elden Ring came out to actually get it and start playing it, because, like, I'll wait for the wiki to be a little bit more fleshed out before
more robust,
because I'm definitely going to need it. But it's also an open world game, but it's not like full of just like arbitrary random bullshit to do. There's dungeons that you can find and bosses that you can get like equipment and resources from, but you don't really have to do it.
Sure.
But if you want a specific item, it's like, okay, wiki, where do I get this talisman that makes my stamina regenerate faster? And it's like, oh, you go here on this Google Maps version of the game map, and it'll tell you like where all the items are. It's like, that's very fucking handy. And yeah.
I sometimes like I love that that's an option for like the internet era of games, right? That like you can like look stuff up if you need to like figure something out. But at the same time, sometimes I really dislike the trend of like game companies developing games with that fact in mind.
Yeah.
Of like, there's no way to figure this stuff out unless you're just really lucky without looking it up. Like, someone's going to encounter it because enough people are playing the game, and then they'll put it online, and that's how everyone else will find it.
Yeah.
But like the likelihood of like one person,
on that fact, it does, make it a little bit questionable.
Yeah, like I don't know. I'm not a huge fan.
Like I do like the idea of just like a game with so much to do and explore that no two people would have the same exact experience going through it the first time. But I mean, you kind of have to have like a middle ground where it's like, like, how do you keep everybody like on the same path without forcing them. And there's actually a video about how Breath of the Wild like tried to accomplish that.
Yeah,
I think it was Game Maker's Toolkit.
Yeah, he had a good one on it very recently.
Yeah, and how they did that with like the towers and
the power of mountains.
Yeah, and mountains, because
because
like the idea of being able to climb like literally everything in that game was like such a big thing. So it's like, you see that mountain, you can climb it. Go see what's on the other side of it. Oh wow, there's so much shit to do over here. I'm gonna do something.
It's the idea that like in any point where you stop and just kind of look out at the view, you will see something that you want to go to and explore, but you won't see everything. There will be something blocking your view in one direction or another, and that'll keep you from being overwhelmed with too much stuff while still giving you something new to go towards. And then as you move towards that thing that you saw, other stuff will come into view, so you'll kind of create your own dotted line towards things. That was a very good video. I mean, that video was him basically rebuilding like a dev talk.
Yeah, they did like a presentation on it, and
that was like kind of like lost to the internet. So he's like, I'm just gonna like find this stuff and like
have it translated and remake these
give
graphics,
that information back out to people, which is really cool. I like that like level of preservation that there's a few like content creators that do that sort of thing where they like make sure to like try to preserve stuff like that. And I appreciate that, because there are so many things that are just like lost to the void.
That's also really, really unfortunate. Like when like a game in particular like gets lost and there's like no way to play it, like even if you could like find a copy of it or download it, if you like it's why emulation is important for one thing, but also like there's like arcade stuff that you can only play it like on that hardware, and and they'd never let anybody like download the ROM or dump the ROM or anything like that. So if that one machine goes away, that game is lost to the void, and there's no way to get it back.
A little while back, did you see the Completionists video about preserving the entire Wii U and 3DS library?
I did not. No, but that's another one. What's like with these online services? So when they go offline,
before
everything on that is lost media.
Before they actually shut down the shop, and like they had announced it like a year ahead of time that they were going to do this. And there's still stuff that I wish I could have gotten off of both of those shops that I just never got around to and didn't have the money for, unfortunately, before it went away. But the Completionist went in and basically got like a team together to buy literally every single thing on both stores.
That's awesome.
It took them days to do it because
I can imagine, because there was a lot of shit on there.
Well, and also like you can only download and install so many things per like SD card.
Right, yeah. True.
Like not even just accounting for space, like the system itself will limit you to a certain number of things, and like you can only have like there's like a limit to the number of things that like you can have like in like your queue or whatever. So it's like you can buy this stuff, but you have to sit there and install it as you go in order to keep buying more stuff.
Wow.
And then like they had all these problems with like stuff trying to stop them from spending. Like they would have had issues with like the credit card company trying to stop.
Yeah, it's like...
So they had a bunch of different people going and buying eShop cards from like different stores and shit.
Wow.
Like as many as they were allowed to buy from the store. Like it was a whole process. It's like a 40-minute video of like how much work went into them trying to preserve the entire library, and it's like preserved across like 3 like terabyte hard drives and like 4 3DSs kind of thing.
Wow.
It's nuts.
So it's backed up somewhere, and
Yeah.
eventually, I guess, you know, if these companies like don't re-release their games for like, you know, newer hardware like Switch or, you know, PC or whatever, they can just, you know, I guess dump the ROMs and other files, and you can emulate that stuff, you know, if you want to play one of these games that would have been lost.
Well, and there's a lot of like small indie games and stuff that'll just disappear into the void like that.
And there are probably like millions of like small games that have just been, you know, put out there, and, you know, maybe like a few people downloaded them one time, and then the developer was like, okay, I'm done making games now, I'm just gonna let this website, you know, let the domain expire, and now nobody can download that game I made like 10 years ago. And, you know, like, they don't consider that anybody would even want to, so it's like, why bother, you know, keeping it, you know, keeping the domain live or whatever. But it's like, how many games have we not even heard of that would have been amazing to play if we had just found them at the right time? You know, like Cave Story could have been one of those games. That was one guy who made that one game, and he just happened to release it, and, you know, it happened to, you know, get a really big audience and get really popular. But it could have easily just died in obscurity with like one person having ever played it.
Cave Story is actually one that like have been talking about recently. One of my friends who had never played it, basically another friend played through it for them to watch, because it's not like the kind of game they would enjoy playing, but they wanted to experience the story. But so like was talking about Cave Story fairly recently, and like it's one of those games that is like the reason why the indie market blew up so much. Like, there are a handful of games that you can point to of like, this is where like the indie boom started, and Cave Story is one of those games.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, it's the reason why we have so many huge Metroidvanias now in the indie market. Similar to how you can point to Binding of Isaac for the reason why roguelikes are such a big thing in the indie market, right? Like,
yeah, I guess, huh?
There are these games that are like core, fundamental, like cornerstones of like why we have what we have at this point, and it's weird to think about like if that game just never found its audience, like we might not have some of the games we do now, because so many were inspired directly by that game's success.
Yeah. Or I mean you could look at it the other way around too. It's like if it didn't catch on, something else would have eventually caught on later. But yeah, I mean it's kind of like an inevitability rather than like a standout like miracle, really. Like,
sure,
it was probably always going to happen. It's just,
I mean, yeah, we would have gotten
when it did.
Yeah, we would have gotten the indie boom eventually. Like, there's too many indie devs that were making games and just throwing stuff out there for something not to stick and like really push forward that market. But the fact that so much of the indie market and like the really good indie games you hear about are Metroidvanias and roguelikes and like platformers are because the ones that found the initial success were those games. You know, so like we might have a different set of genres if something else had caught on that like are like the standouts.
There could have been like an indie turn-based RPG thing like years ago, instead of, you know, like when Undertale came out and it was like, turn-based RPGs are the hot thing right now. Let's all make them, and, you know, make them about weird characters and, you know, have weird non-linear stories and all that. It's like,
God, there's so many like there's so many games that like I can directly point to Undertale as being like I mean, Undertale also like took a lot of inspiration from Earthbound.
Yeah.
Like, this is well known, but like even beyond that, it's just like Undertale specifically did certain things with its world and story setup that you can see that influence in a lot of other like RPGs that have come out since. Like Omori is a really good example of like, it does take a lot of inspiration as well from Earthbound, but there's definitely an influence of Undertale on like the tone and like how that game is set up.
Right.
I really need to finish that game, honestly. Everhood, even, I would say, has some inspiration from Undertale.
Yeah. Like, from what I remember seeing you play it, yeah. I mean, like, aesthetically and gameplay-wise, because, I mean, it had like a dark pixel art kind of style. Like,
Yeah.
Like, it was mostly like the black background, and then the characters were like bright colors and all that.
Yeah, a lot of the game is kind of like that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things from Undertale that really like stood out to me, was like it was really dark but like brightly colored at the same time. So
yeah,
it was high contrast, I guess.
Yeah. There was a vibrance to the characters and like
darkness to the world.
And yeah. But yeah, that's the other thing though that like was a big influence that Undertale had, is just like character, like having just zany characters all over the place constantly. Like that's something you see in a lot of those games. And yeah, like
I even wrote up like an idea document and some concept art for like a high contrast RPG that would have been pretty heavily inspired by like, you know, Undertale, if not just aesthetically, but you know,
yeah,
like it would have been like a high contrast, like probably even monochromatic, like black and white, like pixel art.
Yeah,
and it would have been like horror themed, so it would have been like really,
I remember,
disturbing.
Yeah, I remember
that was
document.
the idea. It was just be like Undertale, but horrifying, and like Lovecraftian kind of vibe. So maybe a little bit of like Bloodborne inspiration in there too. But
nothing exists in a vacuum. Everything's inspired by something.
Absolutely.
But
there's no such thing as originality anymore. There hasn't been for a long time, like probably even since before we were born.
Well,
like,
yeah.
Originality died like decades ago.
I mean, I would say centuries ago originality died, because like
probably.
Everything has been inspired by something, is based on some story.
Yeah.
I mean, like, even if you look at like a lot of the old like Disney classics and stuff, like they're just existing fairy tales that they like kind of softened a bit and made like more palatable, of just like, these are a little more lighthearted now, and like that's how Disney kind of got its like big start, right?
Yeah, because like
it was just existing stories.
We'll do animation, and you know, kids like cartoons, right? So let's do some fairy tales. Oh, this one's a little dark though. Maybe don't, you know, have this part where the character, you know, dies horribly or whatever.
Maybe leave the part out of Cinderella where her sister cuts off the back of her heel to get it to fit into the glass slipper. Like, maybe we don't need that.
They should have put that in like the live action remake. That's what they should have done for the live action ones, is make them more faithful to the source material, include the dark shit.
You know what? I would be more okay with the live action adaptations if they were like brave enough to do that. As it stands, I hate all the live action adaptations.
I am indifferent at best to all of them. I have seen one of them. The only one I watched was The Jungle Book, because it had been so long since I had seen the original. I was like, this might be fun to watch. And, you know, it's also one that they've remade in like live action like a couple different times anyway, so but it was all right, but you know, the original is of course always going to be better. I am of the strong belief that you can't take an animated thing and make it live action without like fundamentally changing the thing. It loses a lot, like trying to make it more realistic.
And like at that point, I'm not interested. Like I prefer animated worlds. They're more colorful.
A post I saw on Tumblr, it was just like a gif from like the Little Mermaid remake that's coming out, and she's like messing with the little fish character, and they're like, okay, as a cartoon, this character, has life to them. They have like an expression. They have like it's like they have a soul. And this live action version just looks like somebody doing animal cruelty because she's like playing with a fish's fins, and the fish just has these like dead fish eyes, and it's like,
yeah,
that does not look like a character. That looks like a fish.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can make the mouth move and put a voice behind it, but it doesn't have 1% of the charm the original animated version of any of these characters had. So
it's like there was that Lion King remake, and that was like one of the big issues with that, was that like there was like no expression to any of it, and it just like it's not a good movie.
And like the scenes that were supposed to be dramatic are comical when you see a real lion cub, like a realistic style screaming that his father just got thrown off a cliff. He's like, no, and it's like there's no expression to this character. It's like he could be saying no, and it would, you could dub like any reaction over that, and it would look exactly the same.
I think the most egregious part about that whole thing is like, if you actually like watch like real cats and stuff, like they are very expressive.
Yeah,
like cats are one of the most expressive animals. Like they're right up there with dogs, and just like they will give you a lot of expression, and the expressions in that movie are just completely flat. It's rough.
Yeah. There's also the fact that it didn't need to be made.
No, it didn't. But
if you're gonna remake a Disney movie in live action, you can either adapt it 100%, in which case, what's the fucking point? Or you can change so much that it's not the original anymore, and
why didn't you just make something
new? What's the fucking
new?
point? Just make something new at that point, yeah. So it's
like...
I mean, and...
A remake should do something to differentiate and kind of elevate itself compared to the original when it comes to movies.
Exactly. So, I mean, and it's like we said, they could have just, at least for the fairy tale reinterpretations, they could have
leaned on the original story.
Leaned on the original story and included some of the darker elements, and that would be more fitting for a live action setting, because the live action movies are usually kind of darker.
Yeah,
like just like in general palette, if not tone. But I mean, but for like the original ones, or more original. I mean, Lion King was, Hamlet with lions, but it's...
Hey, we love Hamlet with lions.
It's like you don't need to remake this. There's no source material to really, adjust to justify making it again. So it's like, why bother? And it's not even live action. It's all CG, so it's still animated.
Yeah, it's more just a thing of like. They've been on this.
I mean, it was impressive.
It
was impressive animation. It was very realistic and really well done CG. But it, it's.
But yeah, they've been on this kick of just like earning revenue via nostalgia. Like that. That's just been like the thing of like the last like decade.
I mean, longer than that even. I mean, they did their whole like run of straight to video sequels.
Man,
it's like, hey, remember these characters? Yeah, those are bad. New movie. They weren't all bad, but most of them were bad.
I can probably count on one hand the number of good Disney sequels.
Yeah, I mean, like after you stuck your hand in a blender, you could still count them. But
like Lion King 2 is okay.
Yeah.
It's Juliet with lions this time. Romeo and Juliet with lions. Lion King 1.5 actually is kind of stellar.
I mean, it's an interesting twist, and it's funny. So
it is. So if Lion King is Hamlet with lions, Lion King 1.5 is there's like a specific like parody of Hamlet.
Yeah, that's
and it's that. Yeah, it's that with lions.
Yeah, and yeah, and it's a fun idea, and it I guess you could argue that it adds to the original in like certain context, but it didn't need to exist, but
Yeah.
I'm not like offended by its existence.
It's still got like decent music. It's got like decent humor, and like it adds to the original without like feeling like it's just like cashing in on it, I guess, is the best way to put it. Like it's not Mulan 2, right? Which like had no reason to exist and doesn't really add to or anything. It's just cashing in on the fact that Mulan did well.
Yeah. Never saw that one. I remember
don't recommend it.
Yeah, like I remember like that was back in the days when Disney Channel was like still a thing, and they would have like bumper segments between like shows and commercials and stuff where they would be like, yeah, this new thing is coming out. It's like we're talking to the voice actors in Mulan too. I'm like, okay. I mean, I liked the first Mulan fine, but this doesn't seem that good. And I was also kind of like aging out of Disney in general, so
sure,
it's like, I mean, maybe kids will like that, but I'm like 14 at this point.
Yeah.
So
hey, we all go through the teenage years of we're too cool for Disney.
I mean, it's not even that. Like it didn't seem like it was made for me.
Sure.
Like, and that's also another thing. It's like, if you don't like something, that's fine. Not everything has to be made for everyone. And I think a lot of people kind of forget that, just like when talking about and criticizing anything in general. But
no, that's fair. Not everything has to be for everyone, and that's fair.
It's okay to not like things. Just don't be a dick about the things you don't like.
On the flip side of that, it's okay to like things. Don't be a dick about the thing you like. And
also that too, yeah.
that is also a thing that is a weird line to deal with sometimes.
Yeah. Like pretty much any like franchise is gonna have its rabid haters and its rabid defenders. It's like
sometimes individual entries within a franchise will have their own. I mean, look at Final Fantasy.
Oh, yeah.
There are people who will defend Final Fantasy VII as being the best one ever of all time to the death. Those people are a little crazy.
I mean, I liked it.
Yeah.
I liked the characters. I liked the spin-offs, and
I grew up with 7. It was my first Final Fantasy. I like all the spin-offs. Yes, even Dirge of Cerberus. Mm-hmm. Yes, Advent Children. That movie slaps. But it's not the best Final Fantasy.
Yeah. It very, very definitely has not aged well.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I think like most RPGs from like up to a certain point, it's like, okay, I get why they were very well loved in their time, but playing them nowadays, it's like
some are rough. Some are rough.
This is rough.
I think some still hold up well. I think Final Fantasy VI holds up well. Like the first time we played that was years after its release, and like it's the whole reason we have a YouTube channel.
Yeah, that is true.
Like Chrono Trigger, I think holds up well.
Yeah.
I didn't play that until we recorded it. It was my first time all the way through that game.
I also think like a big part of that is the graphics.
Sure.
Because, I mean, pixel art is going to hold up forever.
Pixel art
it is a style.
Yeah, it is a timeless style. There is bad pixel art, but like it's as long as it is well done, like purposely done, like it'll hold up.
And that goes for like any kind of graphical style really, but going for realism, it's not going to hold up in like 10 years from now. Like the most realistic looking game that came out like today will look
awful,
notably dated,
yeah.
Like 10 years down the line. But you have something stylized like Okami.
Oh yeah.
That's going to look good. I mean,
always gorgeous.
The only thing they had to do was like make it HD, like cuz like obviously,
they upped the resolutions a little bit. It's a little less blurry when you watch it on a bigger screen.
But like even if you went back and played the original, like on the original hardware, you'd be like, this still looks good. I mean, it's a little blurry on this like, high res screen, but I mean,
Um,
as far as like
a good example of that is Wind
stylized.
Waker.
Yeah, and Wind Waker.
Wind Waker is another one where it's like, if you just look at GameCube released Zelda games, if you're looking at like you look at Wind Waker next to Twilight Princess. Twilight Princess went for a slightly more realistic style, and while it was still kind of cartoony and stylized in its own way, it definitely like doesn't look as good when you go back and look at it. But Wind Waker looks just as good now as it did the day it came out. Like it is, because it went for a very stylized thing that like worked with the hardware. And again, like when they did the HD release, like they just kind of had to up the resolution a bit.
Yeah, and not even like for most of the textures, because it was like cell shaded, so there wasn't a lot of actual texture work on that, like as far as I recall. Like, I mean, I'm sure there were plenty, but it was mostly like that cell shaded cartoony style, which doesn't need texture, which is kind of the point.
Yeah,
because it's supposed to look cartoony and sort of hand drawn. And yeah, like even Breath of the Wild like did some of that, like it's still cell shaded, but there's more detail to it.
Sure.
And I don't think that's gonna look dated. Like, I don't know. I haven't really seen much of the gameplay for Tears of the Kingdom, but I mean it's the same hardware, so I don't think it could possibly be that much of an upgrade.
It looks like, visually to me, it looks the same. I've watched a lot of streams of it. I will probably not play it because me and open worlds don't get along well. We've been over that. I didn't finish the first Breath of the Wild. I'm probably not even going to bother getting the second one. But I've been watching people play it, and it's a good time. There have been some great clips posted onto Twitter and stuff.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of them. Like there was one where somebody was, I guess it was a shrine thing, and I guess you had to like use some of the new mechanics to build a catapult or something.
Yeah,
and they had to drop a box on it, and they stuck the wrong thing to the wrong thing, so it didn't go anywhere, and then the box fell on them.
One of the funniest.
It looks like a lot of fun. Like I want it, but I can wait. I'm not too worried about like story spoilers or anything like that, because
it's Zelda.
It's Zelda. It's
not the deepest story.
Like, I wonder who the villain is. I wonder who the main character is. I wonder who's. I mean,
there's some interesting stuff they seem to be doing with it, and that I'm kind of curious to see where that goes. But I've not been paying a ton of attention to it. But there's a couple streamers I follow that have been going through. But yeah, like the flip side of like animations that hold up well, like as opposed to going stylized, trying to look more realistic, if you go back and you look at, like, as much as I love Final Fantasy VIII, that game's a little ugly.
Yeah, I mean that's PS1 polygon graphics for you.
Yeah,
but that style is making a comeback now.
Well, yeah,
which is kind of weird to think about, but
yeah,
like
no,
we talked about that before.
It's hit like, that point where it's nostalgic.
Yeah, like the low poly, low resolution is like the new like retro style.
Yeah,
and it's probably going to be the last one, because I don't see anybody making like deliberately PlayStation 2 style games or GameCube or like even like the Wii.
I could see it with maybe some of the more stylized games of that era, like trying to emulate like specific games, but not as much just like a general like the
only reason your graphics look like like last generation hardware is because you don't have like the resources to make something more realistic, and like I said, you don't need to do that. Like there's no reason to try for the most ultimately extremely realistic games, because I mean, like even if you do like virtual reality, we're never going to have like virtual reality that is indistinguishable from real life.
Sure.
Like that's not going to happen unless you subscribe to the theory that we are currently living in a simulation, in which case, it's like
that's its own whole
other thing, but
yeah.
we are. That's never going to happen. I mean,
But like not even just the because like yeah, PS1 polygons are gonna look PS1 polygony, but like Final Fantasy VIII also went for just kind of like a more generally realistic feel and style, like with like its CG cutscenes and stuff, and like they don't hold up great. But at the time, that game looked amazing.
Yeah.
On a similar vein, Final Fantasy X. When that came out, I was like, "Oh my god, this looks realistic. This looks like real life." And like now you go back and you watch those cutscenes and you're like, "This is pretty janky." And like that's like the trend that you follow with like games that are designed to look realistic, where it's like you look at them a little down the road and it's
like that. There's a screenshot or something like from an old article about like the PlayStation 1, and it's like the caption is like, the PlayStation 1 is capable of producing extremely realistic graphics, and it's like a picture of like a 4 polygon skeleton. It's like yeah, I mean that was realistic for in 1997.
I love old game ads from like magazines, and god, old commercials are so good. But on the topic of animation, though, found a natural segue. No,
we got through the first thing on the list of things that we talked about, and then went off on a tangent.
we did go on a tangent, which happens.
We had a list this time, and
things to talk about. We haven't talked about anything but the first thing on our list.
And that was like 2 minutes of like, yeah, I talked about the thing.
It was like 10, 15 minutes, but it naturally flowed into some other stuff. But there's a couple of animation things I kind of wanted to talk about, just because I get on those like random hyperfixations where I'm just like randomly pull up a thing or find a thing, and it's all I can think about for a while. So the first of that I want to talk about is Daystone. Because I don't know why it came to my mind. It's been maybe like a month since it randomly popped in my mind again, and maybe a month and a half, and I like went back and rewatched them. It's a short series of 3 animations. Well, 4 animations. There was like a episode 0 that's like unlisted that you can watch, but they're like 2 minutes each, and it was made by. So I found out about the series because it's made by the guy who made Helltaker. So before Helltaker, he had this short series of animations called Daystone about a cat named I'm probably gonna butcher this, but it's like Kocha Perdocha. But like they're completely silent animations outside of like a couple of sound effects. And it kind of sets up this like world where this cat is collecting these things that are called Daystones. And it's one of those things where like there's not a lot told to you, because again, it's like 3 episodes and they're 2 minutes each, right? But it's just like a really cool visual style and then like it has like interesting world building of like you kind of get a feel for what kind of world this is just by like looking around it. Like everything's in ruins, and like at the end, and it's like kind of designed to be video gamey. Like he's mentioned before in like a video talking about the series that like he was inspired by like the covenants in like Dark Souls, of like, oh, you find this like item for the covenant and like you increase your reputation with that covenant. So like there's some video gamey aspects to it where like after like each episode there's like a stat screen where it's like, oh, you unlocked these things, and like there's like 3 factions that like one of them she gains reputation in and the other 2 she loses reputation in. But like she basically just goes and like collects these stones and like has like some sort of like little fight scene with like some other character depending on like where she is. So like the first one, there's like this big like rock golem thing. But I was like watching it again, and I had this thought while watching it of like, it reminds me of Samurai Jack. Like specifically like the really like the quiet, like contemplative episodes. Like
Right.
the one that comes the most to mind is the one with the tower with the three archers.
Yeah.
Yeah, like because that episode is like it's just like very simple visuals and it's like very quiet. There's like not really a lot said until he actually gets to the tower.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of told via the thing of like as he approaches, like these things have perfect aim and like you see like there's like other dead bodies and stuff around it and it's just
interesting. Just want to cut in there for a second.
Yeah.
I watched an interview with Gendy Tartakovsky. First time I've ever actually seen him or heard him talk. Not what I expected, but that's
fair
completely
enough.
beside the point. Apparently, that was his favorite episode of the show to make.
That's understandable, actually. Yeah. That's a really good episode. I would probably say for Samurai Jack, like it is in the like top 5 episodes for me for just like the world building it does and kind of like what it sets up and like just what happens in it is just it's so interesting. But Daystone reminds me of Samurai Jack in those like contemplative moments where everything's kind of quiet. And so it's just like it's been on my mind a lot recently and like there's like part of me that wants to like look more at that world and like kind of try to decipher more of like what he was thinking about when he made that short series. Unfortunately, after the 3rd episode, like basically he like went in with the plan of like I'm gonna make 3 of them and then kind of see how this is doing.
Oh, and if it doesn't, explode, it's probably not worth working on.
Basically, it was one of those things where like he had like talked to some friends who like gave honest feedback and stuff, and they were and kind of usually got the response of that was it, because it is just kind of like it's really short, it's a single scene, and like they take a really long time to make. Like it was taking him longer and longer to make each episode. And his Patreon didn't like quite pick up the like support that it needed. So it's just like it wasn't worth it to keep going, and he didn't feel like there was enough there, which is sad because I think it's like this really cool idea that like I think especially now that like after Helltaker blew up and like he's gotten more attention and stuff, I think he could do something like Daystone again with like, you know, some more of his knowledge that he's gained over the years, and like he has that bigger following now, and I think it would do well. But it's hard to say.
I want to do more animation. It's just so...
It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. Like even like you get the idea that like the CG stuff is easier and faster because it is, but it's also not.
Right.
Like it takes a different kind of work. It's a lot more like it's less tedious because you're not drawing like every single thing, but you still have to like model everything and texture everything so it looks right when it moves, and then you have to make it move. And you know there's always like a few different ways you can do that. You have to figure out what is the best way to make it move, and you know, does it look right, and to say nothing of trying to do motion capture, which is something I really want to try looking into, but I don't really have like...
You don't have the equipment and
like
funds for that kind of thing.
Yeah, like, and there's actually a program I found. It's like a browser-based thing, I guess, but you upload a video and it will use AI to generate motion capture thing, and I'm like, that's cool. That's a good way to use AI. Like that's not That's not a shitty way of, you know, like using AI to like whoops shit. Bump the mic. To like steal somebody else's work and, you know, like fuck with it, and you know, like that's a good way to use AI to, you know, make work easier. And you know, I tried it and it's kind of janky. It would still need a lot of like, you know, hand fixing to like some of the animation, but you know, like with a little more development, I think it could be a useful tool. But I still want to try like finding like I want to get a Kinect, because people use that for like motion, like makeshift low budget motion capture stuff, and it seems like it works really well for that. but I would have to like look up software and stuff for that and actually get a Kinect, which apparently, for one, they're not making them anymore, so they're going to be expensive to get, and it's like, should I get a Kinect or should I just invest in like high grade motion capture software at this point? Because I mean,
I'm actually kind of curious about like how much a Kinect would be these days, because like I know, so I mean it's been a few years. I haven't
actually looked it up, but I imagine they're kind of pricey just because
I don't expect them to be too expensive, but like that could have changed recently. But like, because I know there's a slight difference between like the Xbox One Kinect versus the 360 Kinect. Like there's some difference between those two pieces of hardware. And I am less sure on the Xbox One because I haven't seen as many of those. But I know, and it's been a few years since the shop has closed, but I know when I was working at the shop, we had so many Kinect at one point that like we kept like 10 of them in the back room because there wasn't room to have them out. And they were like $20 at the time. Like,
should have grabbed one when I had the chance, but
like the 360 ones we seem to have in often because they didn't sell super well because they're not very sought after. I don't know what they would be like now because again, like it's been a few years at this point.
I'd have to look it up,
but I can't imagine like a 360 Kinect would be too expensive. And I wouldn't imagine the Xbox One version would be too expensive either, but again, like it could be. Game price, like prices for like game stuff has been so wonky ever since the pandemic hit in general.
People just like I don't know what to do with my life because I can't leave my home. I'm just going to start collecting video games and
pretty much
drive the prices up because
all collectors markets had that issue though. Like card games, God fucking like God, some card games had some insane fucking like price fuckery, and everything's kind of stayed up. Like some like it came back down a little bit. Things kind of stabilized. But everything's more expensive than it was. Like, all collectors markets have been fucked. And they've already, like, to begin with, collectors markets are kind of volatile. And, like, the weirdest things can set stuff off.
Yeah. To say nothing of, like, the grading scandals.
Yeah. And to say nothing of a global pandemic that makes everyone turn to collecting to kill time. But, like, even stuff like a random movie coming out can change the prices of a bunch of stuff. Whether or not that movie is good, it brings those things to like people's minds. So like when they did the Rampage movie.
Oh yeah, huh?
Which I don't think I've heard anyone really talk about. I'm pretty sure it was not very good.
I forgot about it, so
yeah. But when that movie came out, all the Rampage games doubled in price. Like, over the course of a couple days, they all just jumped up in price. And they came back down a little bit, but everything tends to stay up once it goes up a little bit, because people don't want to lose that investment.
Some director had, like, a bunch of Rampage merch and was like, I want to drive the price up so I can sell this. Let's make a like $100 million movie for it.
Let's make a shitty movie. Let's make a shitty movie and we'll put The Rock in it, and then it'll sell tickets, and then people will buy my stuff. But yeah, like weird stuff like that will, or like sometimes it's just like a random YouTuber makes a video about something. Like that happened a lot where like some random YouTuber would be like, I'm going to make a video about this one game that I remember from my childhood, and now suddenly people want that game. Like, so it's such a weird market to predict.
God, I wish I had the audience to drive up demand for a product just by talking about my nostalgia.
Right? Man, if I could just like release a random video that like got a huge amount of traction about like Ty the Tasmanian Tiger or something. You know, like one of those games that isn't really super sought after or expensive, but like make it so.
Everybody tell Volition you want Free Space 3.
Start a trend. Start a trend. But yeah. Yeah.
I actually don't know if they can make Free Space 3 technically. I think the reason they didn't is because of a licensing issue, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But
fair enough.
Yeah.
God, there's so many games I would love to see have some kind of resurgence. I mean, like the obvious one that directly comes to mind is Mega Man Legends, which never got a proper ending. That was a whole thing. We still need to play Legends 2.
We do.
But just to know ahead of time, Legends 2 ends in a cliffhanger.
So I've heard.
And that's just never resolved. We're leaving Mega Man on the moon.
Yeah. And then 3 ends with we're not finishing this game that we've been talking about making.
God, and apparently when they, like, the year they announced that they, like, formally canceled the project, because at this point it was, like... Because at the point when they finally canceled it, it was, like, old hardware running on old hardware kind of thing of, like, it started development, I think, in, like, the PS2 era, and then it got moved to PS3, and then they canceled it when the PS4 was out kind of thing. Like... It was one of those things that just kind of lived in development hell for too long and probably wouldn't have been very good had it come out.
Yeah,
but
like,
it still would have been nice.
Eventually you get to a point where it's like, should we release this or just cancel it? Because, I mean, if we release it as is, it's going to suck. If we cancel it, everyone's going to hate us for canceling it. So it's like, you're fucked either way.
Yeah.
You can either release the shit game or cancel, the shit game.
Yeah. But it's sad because apparently it was pretty much finished. Like it was like a mostly finished game from what I understand when it was canceled, but it happens.
They should have just released it. I mean, if it's a matter of looking good on the hardware, it's like,
yeah.
I mean, but on the other hand, it's like old software on new hardware, you introduce a bunch of bugs. So
yeah,
maybe they just didn't want to deal with fixing that, 3 generations of
consoles. Who knows, like, what wasn't finished or, like, what issues the game could have had. That, like,
graphically,
they just
it was already,
like,
a stylized game.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine they were too concerned about the graphics looking slightly worse or slightly better on, like, a next generation of hardware. So it would have had to have been, like, compatibility issues at that point, I think.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Like, there's not enough information out there about, like, where it was in development.
I mean, I guess
it was canceled during a time when Capcom was making a lot of questionable decisions in general, I feel. So, like, it's just another one of those things to be like, Capcom, you guys really sucked in, like, the like late thousands to, like, early 2010s. Maybe one day we'll get another Mega Man X game that isn't a really, really bad gacha game. Because apparently that's where the series is these days.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. It's one of those things that I forget about every once in a while, and then I remember, and I'm like, oh, I'm sad again.
Well, we did get another Mega Man X game. It was called Mighty Number 9.
You know what? Mighty Number 9 gets a lot of flack that I don't think it deserves. Is it everything that it should have been based on promises made during the Kickstarter?
No.
And, like, no.
It wasn't. I didn't.
Would it have been better if they stuck to the 2D visual style that was in the original Kickstarter trailer instead of the 3D style they went with? Yeah. Would it, like, it would have looked better. It should have been a better game than it was. As someone who backed the Kickstarter at the bare minimum level of get a copy of the game, I was not disappointed with what I got.
Yeah, I didn't think it was, like, terrible or anything. It was not the successor to Mega Man that it was, like, billed as.
It definitely was not the Yeah, it
Like,
wasn't the Mega Man that we wanted.
It really
for sure.
just felt like something that was like, I want to be Mega Man. It's like, but you're not. And
oh god,
you will never be.
What was the? I'm trying to remember the name of the other character. There was like the DLC where you could play as the Zero equivalent. And I don't remember her name. But I just want to say, like, playing through the game as that character instead of Mighty was a much better experience. The character's melee focus, because like with that character, when you you know how like you would do so much damage to an enemy and then you would dash through them to absorb them.
Right.
When that character dashes, they do damage.
Oh.
And so like since they're a melee character and you're dashing to do damage anyway, it was a much more natural fit to like the game's like goal and like what it was going for in like how the gameplay loop worked. Like it just felt so much better playing as that other character, or it's like this should have been the focus. It should have been this. I know they were going for like a revival of like, here's our spiritual successor to Mega Man. We got the original Mega Man guy. But
not enough of the other Mega Man people though.
Yeah, but like I really think that like they should have focused more on the other character. It was just a much better playthrough overall. But like that game got a lot of complaints and stuff that if you were someone who had backed the Kickstarter at a higher tier and were expecting more of the game, I can understand why people were so frustrated. But
yeah, for sure.
As someone who went in of just like, I just wanted to play the game and I wanted to play something that gave me the same like nostalgic feeling of playing Mega Man without necessarily being Mega Man. It was everything I expected it to be, and I enjoyed it. So that's where I'll leave that.
That's totally fair.
But I think that's probably a good place to go ahead and end this spellcast before we get onto another tangent.
Yeah. We are trying to keep these under the 2-hour mark, so
yeah, it would be nice to keep these to like an hour, hour and a half, I think is like the range we should try to aim for. But yeah. God, there's probably more I could say about Mega Man right now because I've been like thinking about a lot of Mega Man stuff lately, but I'll save that for maybe next time.
maybe we'll play another Mega Man game sometime.
Yeah,
soon. And
that'd be nice. It's been a bit.
We could play Legends too.
Yeah,
at some point.
Go through Legends 2, or we could start Command Mission. I don't know if I want to start Command Mission. Maybe after we go back and finish Okami, we can start a Command Mission.
Yeah, we do need to get back to Okami eventually.
Yeah.
We're working up to it. Like,
yeah.
It seems like something that kind of like the reason we didn't start like previous attempts at coming back with Okami was because like it didn't seem like something to just jump back into after
it's been a couple years.
Yeah, so that was why we were putting it off to play a few shorter games or some less complex games just to work our way up to it. So
yeah,
maybe relatively soon, but
I do want to get back to it, but we got to remember where we were and gotta get a feel for the game again. I think would probably be a good idea.
And I don't think that'll be too much trouble. I mean, I could just go back and watch
we can go back and
watch the tail end of the footage that.
We can go back, watch the footage, figure out where we were again, and then like maybe play and just run around a little and not like do anything. Yeah, just to get a feel for it again.
And then we'll start actually like playing it and recording it and making more episodes and yeah.
But that'll be for next time.
Yeah, as of right now, we still have about half of Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog to go. Episode wise, I mean, we finished the game already, obviously, but there's still like 3 more episodes of that, I think.
Okay.
I think 5 went up yesterday. So yeah. So and yeah, then we're gonna play Klonoa, like after we save this recording.
Yeah, looking forward to that. But we'll talk about that while we play it.
And I'm pretty sure those episodes will go up after this spellcast, because
yeah, they should.
Yeah, because
so
3 more episodes of Sonic and
yeah,
yeah. So
this spellcast should go up next week, and the last of Murder of Sonic should go up during that week as well. And then the week after you're hearing this is when we should be starting our Klonoa uploads.
Unless I forget to upload an episode or skip a day or something for whatever reason. Usually it's just because I forgot, but
yeah. Well, we'll see how that all goes.
Yeah. So yeah, this has been SpellCast. Thanks for listening. If you're still listening, if you have the YouTube window open and you're not really listening, at least thanks for letting the watch time accumulate.
Thanks for the watch time and maybe the listen time. And sorry we're not good at outros.
Yeah.